Hi-yo, everybody. Zach here, and welcome to sunny Spain. My riding buddy today will be the 2026 KTM 990 RCR. That is a claimed 128 horsepower, 430 pounds, and it will sell in the United States of America for about $14,000. This is, of course, KTM's first full-size, fully fared sport bike in more than a decade, which makes it an important model for the brand and an exciting new bike in the world of motorcycling. So we're going to take it for a spin around this 2.6-mile Seville Circuit. The track's about to go green in a few minutes, but before it does, I want to show you around some of the componentry and features of this new model. Let's take a spin. We'll start at the front with these Brembo High Pure calipers. This is basically the highest spec caliper you can get from Brembo, and it's on a $14,000 bike, which KTM is pretty proud of, I think rightly to some extent. Steel braided lines and a big juicy radial pull caliper here with an adjustable master cylinder, all the sort of best of the best as far as braking componentry is concerned. There's a WP 48mm fork, fully adjustable as you would expect. To pivot a little bit here, we got these winglets, which provide something like 30-something pounds of downforce at 150 miles an hour or something like that. KTM wasn't super stoked on giving us exact numbers. They basically just said the design department did not want them on the bike, but testing decided the bike was faster and better with them on, so they went for it. And it's got this big old funky mustache on the front to try to add stability at speed. As we move backwards here, one feature I actually really like is this frame slider, which this little puck kind of seems almost like an afterthought, but there's actually a steel bar behind it connected to the frame. It's an actual frame slider built in to the outside of the fairing, and I think that that's pretty keen for a bike that is designed to go to the racetrack. Right here doesn't really look like much, but it's actually where this bike differs a lot from the KTM 990 Duke. The swing arm is different, the pivot setup is different, this part of the frame is different. It has a linkage for the rear shock, whereas the 990 Duke is linkageless, and the WP shock is fully adjustable as you would expect. You can see the catalytic converter in there. It is large, and KTM needed to make a lot of room for all that exhaust technology and baffling to go up underneath there. It's really close to the shock linkage, it's close to the shock itself. It takes up a lot of space in there, but the benefit is that it's a fairly clean look on the outside. It's just the stubby muffler sticking out and being held by the pillion pegs. The passenger accommodations are minimal, as you can see. It's not really that type of motorcycle. I did sit back here for a little while with the cruise control on, and it was surprisingly comfortable considering how absurd it looks. So if you're planning to take a passenger on the bike, good on you. You can also get a racy little seat cowl in the aftermarket catalog. Let's see what else we got here. We could talk a little bit about the fuel tank. KTM is quite proud of the design of the fuel tank and how it acts in many different ways to help the rider stay connected to the bike on the street or on the track. It holds a little more than 4 gallons, which is nice because I'm tired of saying that motorcycles hold 3.7 gallons of gas. I think that's kind of pathetic. So yeah, 4.2 gallons of gas, which is good if you're gonna take a road trip on this sucker. Best of luck to you. Let's take a look at this 8.8-inch TFT dash if we can. It is quite large and impressive to use. Doesn't quite fit inside the fairing in the way that you'd really want it to, honestly, but it does do some nifty tricks. It has lots of different menus and modes you can choose from. All of the sort of artwork on the menu is surprisingly satisfying to use. It also has touchscreen capability, so you can scroll with your fingers if you want to, and when you adjust things, you can do it all via touchscreen if that's what you want to do. This arguably isn't a great fit for this bike to have a big touchscreen like this, but the development of this dashboard actually began before the development of this motorcycle. It just so happened that they coincided and they tried it on this bike, but the software and all the touchscreen ability is something that KTM is developing and will be on bikes sometime soon, especially 1390 models. So that's a quick little tour of the dash, but let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? If you want to know my impressions of this bike as a street motorcycle, I spent about 150 miles on it yesterday. I rode around, I tried the turn-by-turn navigation, I tried all the features that I could possibly do, cruise control and stuff like that. But now we have a racetrack that is about to be open for business, and I want to see what this sucker feels like at speed. So let's get to it, shall we? All right. Okie doke, everybody, here we go. Green light. And we are ready to roll on the 990 RCR from KTM. I have wheelie control off, don't worry. We'll do a quick one. And we will start with talking about what the bike feels like to sit on. It is fairly aggressive. It
felt aggressive when I rode it on the street. A lot of weight on your wrists. Not so much as a classic old school super sport like a GSXR or a Yamaha R bike or something like that, but it is surprisingly severe. I thought the handlebars were going to be a little bit higher. Of course, on track like this, the riding position feels very appropriate. It has a fairly wide seat and fairly tall, 33.2 inches maybe, something like that, which is a pretty tall seat height for a mid-sized bike. But of course, that's what works in a performance setting, and so that's what KTM went with. We go up the back straight away. When you rev the engine up, it's surprisingly docile, but it can be deceiving because it's going fast. Here we go, 140 something miles an hour. But it does not make a ton of power way up top. It has a very fat mid-range, which is of course a street engine, and so it doesn't feel super strong up top, but that is much more common these days with sort of mid-sized to large twins, this mid-sized sport bike market, whether it's a Suzuki GSX-8R or a Panigale V2 or whatever. So you have to get used to riding it at speed and sort of shifting a little earlier than you think. Our peak power is at 9,500, but peak torque is below 7,000 RPM. And so shifting early is not necessarily a bad thing. Okie doke. So we have a fairly racy motorcycle with a street engine. We're going to fire it down this straightaway. Here we go. Doesn't feel like I'm going very fast, but that's 150 miles an hour. That's not bad. Pretty cool. Now it feels quite planted in the middle of corners. I think it's actually especially stable in fast corners like this. As you tip through a really fast corner like this, very, very stable. A little bit less so when you're on the brakes, but that's typical of any motorcycle. One place I was a little bit surprised is the effort to steer this bike. It's a little bit higher than I'd expect. It's not especially heavy, and it feels quite agile, but once you're on a line, it's a little bit hard to switch. It's not as light from side to side as some of the other mid-sized bikes in the class. Woo, brakes! Oh boy! The brake pads are not especially aggressive, and that means the initial bite, when you first get on the lever, you can feel a little bit muted, but there's lots of power on tap. And the brake fade is very minimal, which is really great. All right, coming to the end of lap number 2. Let's wick it up a little bit and talk about some of the nuances of handling and take a little tour of this Seville Circuit, which is a real hoot. There we go, everybody. All right, be braking as late as you can. All right, haul it down to a slow down. I thought this was going to be a second gear corner, but it's third because the mid-range is so powerful. It just pulls out of corners so hard at 6,000 or 7,000 RPM. So fast down this hill. It feels really planted at speed. It's super impressive. It's just a little hard to get it to change direction and fall the last little bit into the corner. This corner I've been struggling with all day. I want to be able to just slap it on its side right here, but I have to slow down a little more than I want to. But the bike makes up for it with a little bit more horsepower. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Ah! There we go. Boy, almost missed my brake marker there. Woo! Into this flat section right here. It's a really basic set of corners where you can focus on your technique. And the bike's very obedient. Whoops, I forgot to downshift. But if you forget to downshift, that's one of the nice things about having a street-based engine in a sport bike. Whether it's a Yamaha R9, Panigale V2, or especially this 990 KTM motor. Just the mid-range is ridiculous. Okay, that's 3 laps of talking. Let's take a spin, pick up the pace just a little bit. Let's listen to it sing, everybody. Okie dokie. There's 1 lap, plus 3 of the Seville Circuit. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I'm gonna go spin around some more. I'm gonna turn down the trash control here. There we go, level 2. It was intervening a little bit too much. Wish me luck, everybody. Thanks for riding along. Oh yeah, awesome. How are you?